Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 125 of the Actual Fluency Podcast, the podcast for anyone who wants to learn a foreign language. Each week, I invite special guests in the language learning community, accomplished polyglots, or even industry experts to try and talk about how to best learn foreign languages, give you the best tips, tricks, and ideas so that you can become fluent much faster and much more efficiently than the good old school method. This week I'm joined by Joey Perugino he's one of the organizers of Langfest. He's a good friend of mine. I was there in 2 years ago in Montreal, had a really good time. So that's also why I'm really happy to see that they continued the event the next year, and now this is the third year they're going to have it. It's on the 21st of August. And if you're listening to this in the future, go to langfest.org and see if the next one might have been put up for registration. You can catch a discount if you use the code Chris, so it's KRIS. They'll give you 15% off. Additionally, they have other discounts as well. But so if you're looking to buy a last minute ticket on Langfest, then use that code, get a bit of discount. I really, really enjoy language events, and we're going to talk about this in the episode, so I'm not going to take too much of your time before getting into the actual episode itself with Joey. But I just wanted to say, if you have the opportunity to go to events like this, there's the gathering in Bratislava, there's the conference in Slovenia this year, will be a new place next year, and then there's the Langfest here, which is in the end of August, late August. So if you can go, I really encourage it. It's a fantastic experience, life changing for some people. So yeah, give it a try. The other thing I recommend you check out is Glossica, which is the sponsor of the podcast. They're an online audio course provider which is focused on spaced repetition. So you get a lot of repetitions of each sentence that has a lot of grammatical points in it. So each sentence is designed to get you to be familiar with different varieties of the language. So it could be different grammatical elements, it could be objects, pronouns, conjugations, and so forth. And they have 50 plus languages available for in the same subscription, so you don't have to pay extra if you're an aspiring polyglot who want to study a couple of languages at a time. So check it out at tryglossica.com. So that's Glossika, Glossica, and tryglossica.com will get you to the website where you can, get a free trial and check it out. And if you like it, you can subscribe for a monthly fee. And as I said, you get access to all the languages, all the tools. They have lots of different games and applications. But anyway, that's enough for now. Enjoy this episode with Joey Perugino. And if you're going to Langfest, let me know. I'd like to follow you and get your Instagram snaps. Unfortunately, I won't be there, but have a great time and enjoy the episode. Welcome you, Joey, to the podcast. Thank you for taking the time out of your probably lovely summer afternoon to talk to me today.
It is my pleasure to have an opportunity to talk with you, Chris. Um,
Fantastic.
it's uh, always pleasant to do so.
Well, thank you very much, and I always remember back to my good time in Montreal a couple of years back when you did the first Langfest, and I was there to see it all unravel, and now you're in the third one, which obviously we're going to talk a lot about today. But yeah, I remember those was it tacos or burritos in the late night and
Yeah, yeah,
Montreal. It's a wonderful place to be in the world.
yep. I don't remember exactly the. I remember we had a drink that day, some kind of Mexican drink, and there was something weird written on it. Have a
Yeah.
picture of it somewhere. We were like debating, how does this make any sense? What does this sentence really mean? Stuff like that. Yeah,
Well, that's language notes for you, isn't it? It's
I
anytime there's
guess
an
so.
opportunity, there's always discussion. But before we get started on all the Langfest goodness, do you want to just give the listeners an idea of who you are, where you're from, what you've been doing with languages that went into eventually creating this event?
I guess so. Um, Well, I'm Joey Perugino. I'm, I guess, the product of a mixed cultural background. My father was Italian, but he came to Canada, Montreal, when he was 16. My mom was born here. She's Canadian. Her mom and dad both had French Canadian, were both born here, but they came from mixed backgrounds also. My On my father's side, the on my sorry on my mother's side, the her father was part German and her mother was part Spanish.
Oh.
So I had a lot of things always around me from the beginning, and that sort of brought made me always curious about languages. I mean, I think Montreal in itself also is quite unique in the fact that there's always that duality of French and English, but everybody, at least all my friends in the neighborhood that I lived, came from somewhere else. I had Portuguese friends, Greek friends, Italian friends, French Canadian friends, um, and that helped shape me into the, I guess, the language geek that people know me as today. In my, I guess, in my youth, I went to a bilingual French school, so that helped. French and English all day, half day in French, half day in English. My high school was only in French, but I did my university in English. Um, I've made a lot of efforts throughout, I guess, the years in order to be able to come to learn a little bit more about my father's culture, which was Italian. I bought my first language book when I was about 14 to learn Italian because I wanted to speak it better. Because we never really spoke it at home. My father just spoke to me in French, and I sort of learned it after. Spanish. My grandmother used to talk to me a little bit in Spanish. My mom used to make me watch a little Spanish shows or movies when I was young, so that exposed me a little bit more. But I mean, when we grow up, I think language just comes at us from many different directions. Some people are more curious about it than others.
Hmm.
I always was. German's the is a language that, because my grandfather, I guess, was part German, that I always wanted to learn, but um, haven't been exposed to it so much. There's actually no one around me that speaks German. So, although I think I bought my first German language kit when I was probably 16, 17. I've been rehashing at it for the last 30 years or so and making gradual progress. I'm making more progress now. I think there's more, it's easier because of all the content that's out there, and also hosting, being the co-organizer of an event like Langfest. You're around so many people that are just so incredible,
Right.
that know so many languages and stuff like that. You can't help but, you know, kick yourself a little bit of a kick yourself a little bit in order to push you to do the extra effort to learn that language. But
Right.
some languages are easier than others to learn, and I mean, I've had the good fortune to meet a lot of people like yourself and other polyglots from all around the world. All of you give me your little tidbits of wisdom as to how I should go about learning. You go and you take and pick little things here and there. I think gradually, I mean, if you're consistent and you want to push forward, you will learn.
Hmm.
But it takes effort, like anything in life. If you really want to make it happen, you will. But um, nothing happens by mistake. I guess we learn, uh, like the co-organizer of Langfest Tetsu. learned when he was young, and he's trying to do with his kids, try to expose them to as many languages as possible from a young age,
Hmm.
so that they all grow up learning it sort of naturally. That might be the best method. But for most of us, that maybe get one or two when we're young, and after that we acquire the others. Um, it's not. It's maybe not as straightforward the learning path.
Right. How's that manifested itself when you got those language books when you were, let's say, a teenager or a little bit older maybe, and you still had that like idea of wanting to learn more languages? Was that, did you take any school courses or?
Well, yeah. I mean, for example, for me, taking language classes was, I guess, an opportunity to learn a language, and it was always classes that I did fairly well in. So helped me get better credits at or better grades at university instead of having linear algebra or
Yeah, but
accounting or whatever. I took Spanish, or I took Italian, and
oh yeah,
I mean, I helped learn, acquire, or deepen my knowledge of those languages. Um, it's I guess languages is something that's always interested me, Chris.
hmm,
Um,
makes it easier to
like,
learn. Well,
yeah,
when
I guess so. It does make it easier to learn, and it's sometimes when you have conversations with people, they think it's like, oh my God, you speak so many languages and stuff like that. I guess some of it is simply interest,
mhm.
natural curiosity, and other people are just not tuned into that.
Yeah,
But I always was,
I see
you
that.
know.
It's
So
it's all about really your upbringing, of course, but also the cultural environment you grow up in. If you grow up in a place where nobody speaks a second language, then it's probably hard to build that interest when you're young.
yeah, I guess one of the languages that I really worked, probably that I worked the most at to really want to learn, was Italian when I was young. Because even though my father was Italian, I never really got the chance to speak it,
Hmm.
apart from on occasion when I went to see my grandparents or certain types of events where older generation Italians would talk to you in Italian. Then you would try to speak. Um, However, I guess when both your parents don't speak normally in that language and they don't talk to you in that language, it's always a little bit more of an effort to learn.
Sure, yeah.
And I guess it was a really important for me to be able to acquire that language in order to just feel more, I guess, linked, associated with my father's culture, with my last name, with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
It opened me up to another world. It made me feel accepted in that world. And sometimes sometimes I guess when I was younger I didn't necessarily feel that I was.
Right.
Um, I guess language helps. You're learning a language helps open a door.
The language is like identity, I guess. So
It
if you
does, and
feel
people
like,
treat you differently if you can speak to them in their language.
oh yeah, for sure. Like, do you have any good, do you have any stories yourself about that? I always like those kind of stories about people. Some of my favorites are people saying a few words in, I think it was, what do you call it, in Eastern Europe somewhere, a little country. They spoke a few words just out of politeness and curiosity, and they were treated to staying for free at a family, and they were treated 3 meals a day, and super hospitable people. But they probably wouldn't have if they were like, "Do you speak English?" So
Well, sometimes I mean when the most one of the most rewarding times in my life that I can say that I felt happy or blessed for being having this curiosity for languages was about 25, 25, 26 years ago when I went away on a trip with some of my, I guess, Italian friends. to Cuba on vacation, and we met a lot of locals that were Cuban, and Cubans are very naturally curious, I guess. They like talking with people and stuff like that. And then early 90s, I guess tourism wasn't as big as it is today. So whenever a tourist came, even though you're in a tourist area, resorts and stuff like that, they were always very curious to talk with you, wanted to know about stuff that's happening in your countries and things like that. And the little bit of Spanish that I knew had permitted me to be able to play sort of as an interpret with my interpret translator with my friends between the Cubans that were trying to talk with us and my friends that just spoke Italian, but for them, uh, Spanish was completely alien. They
Right.
didn't have the chip of having that natural curiosity like I do, I guess, because in reality, there's a lot of similarities,
Hmm.
but for them it wasn't there. And when I was talking, I guess, because I mean, you can try to learn a language for so long, expose yourself in many ways, but until you actually put yourself out there and try to talk, you don't really know, or you can't really gauge how well you know it.
Hmm.
And that for me, that trip was defining. It's what made me realize, wow, I speak a lot more Spanish than I actually thought I did. And I really enjoyed that role very much of being able to be the between the locals and my friends, and being able to connect with them in a way that I never thought that I would, and I wouldn't have been able to if I didn't speak a little bit of Spanish, if I hadn't made the effort to learn it.
Yeah.
Uh, that really, I mean, if you want to talk about a moment that defines a person, that like really opens you up to say, wow, I really like this language thing and I want to become, I want more. That was probably it.
It's the start of an addiction, maybe.
I guess so. And a few years later, when I was in university, I got involved with a student association, and there were some people that were coming from, I guess, a lot of countries around Latin America. And again, I used my Spanish, and I was like their local resource, bring them everywhere, stuff like that. It's been something that I enjoyed very much.
It's a
Same
joy.
thing happened with Portuguese from when I had the opportunity to exchange with a lot of people from Brazil when I was in university. That made me fall in love with that language also.
Hmm.
Uh, I think in order to learn the language, there has to be something that probably clicks, something that attracts you to that language, that makes that learning that language appealing, interesting.
Hmm.
Um, some languages it's easier to find that. Others, it's more like homework.
Yeah.
you don't you don't you don't have that thing that makes you click or gives you a real reason to want to learn it. And I think for certain people that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
um,
You
so
need
for
the push.
so for me, um, when I succeed in getting knowledgeable enough in a language to be able to interact, acquire more knowledge, maybe the music, culture, food, all kinds of things, that come with learning a language. That's part of what makes it interesting.
Yeah, well, that's why I hope that's why most people do it. I mean, obviously there are some people who have very specific, say, interpreting goals, or maybe they need it for a specific reason, other than actually using it in the culture where it's spoken. But I hope that most people listening to this try to take as much in from the culture they're learning about through the language, because like you said, I also find that's the most rewarding thing about it, because you connect with the culture in a completely different way than if you're just there as a foreigner with no language skills at all.
hmm I mean, it's very common, at least in the first generation immigrants. If I look at my father's generation, my father spoke French and English very well, but a lot of his I guess, compatriots or people that came from Italy in the 40s, 50s, and things like that really, really struggled to learn.
Mm.
They just continued living in their little mini representation of their world that they had created here. They only bought from Italians, only dealt with Italians, only did their things in Italian. They didn't really. Maybe it's because they felt uncomfortable learning a new language, and nobody really broke it down or encouraged them to try to learn French or English.
Hmm.
But either way, for some reason, they resisted. And in many cases, unfortunately, now you'll see the opposite. People from my generation, which are not learning the parents of our forefathers or things like that, and they just speak French and English, and they're losing something that was really special that their parents could have passed on to them,
Mm.
which is the gift of a language. If I look in my family, I have I guess my father's brother also married a French Canadian, but she wasn't like my mom from other backgrounds, so they really only spoke French,
Hmm.
and his kids only speak French. They speak
Mm.
no Italian, which is really sad.
Yeah, it is a shame. Yeah. Hey guys, I just wanted to take a quick break here and give a shout out to the sponsor of today's show, which is Glossica. Glossica have been extremely supportive of the Actual Fluency podcast and website over the years, and I'm really thankful and grateful that they wanted to come on board for this kind of re-release of the podcast, this new era. And what is Glossica? Well, essentially, it's kind of like a spaced repetition system, but with audio-based sentences. So you have listening practice, you have speaking practice, and every day you can do reps. So you log on to the Glossica site, and the software, using some fancy AI technology, actually places you on your skill level and suggests sentences and content that are appropriate. And what I really like is you can log on to Glossica and just press a button, and it will do all the reps you need for that day. This is in contrast to other websites where you have to constantly click or type, and there's merit to that. But I really like Glossica's approach as well. So if you want to get started with Glossica, check it out at tryglossica.com, and that's Glossica spelled Glossika. Have fun. But you see it a lot in these in the Western world, that the language of the immigrants, they disappear in, I think it's only 2 or 3 generations. Like two, it's almost gone, and three, it's almost certainly gone, which is really scary. That's really quick to lose quite a big part of the identity. But of course, there are many issues with usually adapting into foreign culture. It sometimes can be difficult to have let's say a different language. If you're the kid at school who, let's say, everyone else speaks English exclusively, and you're the kid who also knows Italian. I mean, I don't think the other kids and let's say you were about 7, don't think the other kids would find that cool. They would probably quickly use it as an excuse to like endlessly, um, you know,
Bully you
bully
or
you,
something like that.
exactly,
Yeah,
because
kids can be very cruel,
you're
and it's
weird.
one of the reasons
You're
where
different.
when I was young, I really felt bad about not talking Italian because I went to elementary school that was 95% Italian, and I was like probably one of the only ones there that didn't really speak. I understood, but I spoke very poorly, very little.
Hmm.
And that really is probably one of the things that motivated me to really make an effort to learn. And I
That's
had a lot
great.
of discussions with my parents saying, "Why you gotta talk to me more in Italian. I really want to learn and stuff like that." And they encouraged me, but they still, because it wasn't the norm in our house to always watch Italian or talk in Italian. It just didn't happen naturally.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah,
It's a shame that it happens like that. But your story is one of
very
many.
similar to many
Yeah,
many persons all around the world, I'm sure.
I've heard that a lot of times, and also there's the idea of it is a misguided idea. I'll give that say a preface to it, but there's the idea that parents think that if you move to let's say an English speaking part of the world, that the child will need English to sort of be accepted or get a job or a university or whatever, while they don't really know that you can actually there's no reason not to do both or three or five like Tetsu's is demonstrating.
Exactly, exactly.
You know?
No, he's extreme, but the formula works.
Yeah, it really does. It is actually scary to see how just how well it works, but the brain is amazing, and especially at that age when you're, just starting out learning a language, when you're 2 or 3 or whatever the time is they start speaking well. Um,
Hmm.
your brain mass is so malleable. You can just build whatever you want to build, even five languages or more. I guess there's also Bella as a good example.
Yeah, there's many theories on that, and actually one of the persons that's speaking this year at Langfest is Agathe Trupela or something like that, and she's a um, I'm trying to find her thing. So she's a speech language therapist.
Okay.
Okay, and one of the things that she does is that she wrote a book actually on language acquisition and things of the sort.
Hmm.
I think her parents are from. Her father was from Angola, but she was born and raised in Canada, in Montreal, and she also speaks French and English, and I guess the specific language that they speak in the area that her father was from, because in Angola itself, I think there's like 50 different dialects or something like that. So every village speaks something else.
Mm,
Um, it was very, very hard for her to acquire the language, and even now today, she's making efforts to do so. Um, but some of it is having access to content
yeah.
like for Italian or Spanish or English or French. There's so much content that's out there. If you want to learn, you can. For
Yeah.
certain languages, it's harder.
Definitely. And
You know, like
how's that changed for you as you mentioned you bought, some of the books when you were starting out as a teenager, but I must imagine that it's it's changed quite a bit the way you
the
learn
formats
or
of everything that's available is very, very different. I mean, learning in itself, you have to invest yourself in whatever tool or method that you're using and just go through the flows
yeah,
in order to learn.
I've
Okay,
done that.
but it's much more accessible than it used to be. I mean, I had bought just a book, but I also had for German. I
Right.
remember I had cassettes or things like that. Cassettes didn't work very well for me. I was too lazy to go through them, but the books worked a little bit more. Um, but it all depends on what's out there nowadays. Like for example, 3 4 years ago, I I, uh, I was like fed up of all discouraged with my lack of progress in German, and I said, okay, I got to pick another language. I said, which language should I pick that should be easy for me to learn, given that I speak French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese? I said, okay, I'll pick Romanian. And then I saw on YouTube there was a channel from back then. She was probably the only one um,
Mm.
for learning Romanian, and her classes were really fun and things like that. And I said, oh, that's great. So I started following that, and I found that as I thought, there's a lot of similarities between Italian and Romanian and things of the sort that I started understanding and picking up the language, and it was very encouraging to see different
Mm.
types of materials that I could use. So that sort of introduced me to other methods of learning, and YouTube is very, very,
Yeah.
very popular. It's a good tool. Like for German, I use German Pod 101 and things of the sort, which is like 24 hours of someone
Yeah,
just
I've seen
shooting
those.
phrases at you, and and things of the sort. I mean, it's fun. I know you've learned German as a second language also, so you know that uh, having access to having
Yeah,
material
I did it in a very
is
passive
key.
way. It's the first foreign. Well, I mean, kind of ignoring English for a second, which I know I shouldn't be doing, but it's the first foreign language I learned exclusively in school. Because I didn't really, I had a good language ear, so I could quickly get to know the stuff for the in the school, the syllabus. But unlike English,
Hmm.
there was no German content widely sort of watched, or there was no German TV. I mean, we had the German channels, but I wasn't going to sit and watch some 80s crime detective show in German. I learned English because the video games were all in English, and those were the games that my friends were playing. That I was playing them a lot, so you had to learn English. But there was nothing the same pressure for German. So my German is not, compared to the time that I spent on it, it's not very good. And I haven't actually spent any significant time on my own learning it. So it's pretty much only been in school. So that experience is very different for me as well. But yeah, if you spend enough time on something, you will eventually get good at it, even if it's like just in school.
Well, if you look at uh, North America, okay, like for example, here in Quebec, people start learning English or French, a second language, from I guess the second or third grade of elementary school, and they learn it
Hmm.
in theory for about 10 years. However, most people will finish high school not being able to carry on a very simple conversation
Yeah,
in that target language. Why? Because they're just learning it
like math
passively, like
and
you said. They're not really finding a valid reason to learn it. Um, and I guess it's the way that it's taught at school that maybe is not as
yeah, it's not
effective as it
about
should be.
speaking and listening. Definitely, it's more about just vocabulary and grammar. Maybe
It's not interactive
people can
enough.
explain grammar rules or tell you what a word is, but they really struggle if they have to buy a milk from the shop or something.
Something like that. So, I mean, there's so many programs out there when you look at it to try to get people to learn languages. There's many academic programs that are there also. Some of them are better than others. Um, having been to a bilingual school when I was young, where literally half the day was in a language and the other half was in another language, I can say that that's probably the best formula for
Yeah,
someone to actually learn a language. And the English that I learned in my first 6 years of school was sufficient for me to be able to speak English very well, like I do now, and go do my
yeah,
university studies in English. Although I didn't really
yeah.
do it in all high
I don't
school.
think it's I don't think it's about the time necessarily. I mean, we definitely have to be careful about how we define it. It's about the hours, really, not the years. Because I had German in, I think, about probably 13 school years. I had German, so that was elementary school, that was high school, and I also had a little bit in university. Um, but in especially in primary school, you only have, an hour and a half a week. So if you add that up, I think I made the math at some point. I did. I believe it was about 300 hours that I estimated, just because of holidays, of you know, uh, weekends and everything. It just came out to a very small number over the years. So I think you when you say 6 years, you obviously had quality 6 years, whereas somebody can go 10 years with very low quality or very low quantity in those 10 years, and not know a thing.
Exactly. Exactly. So, what do you attribute your success to since you only had 300 hours or so of German? And I know you even did an interview in German once a
Yeah,
couple of
it's
years ago.
I still I still would not consider myself a success in German. It's still a very weak language. I still make a lot of mistakes. But I think what happened
Hmm.
was, first of all, I really liked my German teacher back in elementary school. He was a really cool teacher. He was really cool guy in general, but he was kind of in on the whole
Hmm.
computer thing. He understood a little bit, which in the 90s was completely unheard of. Like all the teachers didn't even know what a computer was, most of them. Uh, this guy, we used to go to, we had swimming lessons every week, and I would sit close to him in the bus. You can't always sit next to the teachers because everyone wants to sit next to the teacher. And we'd talk about silly things like I don't even remember what we're talking about, like website coding and all sorts of geeky things that were happening at the time. So because I really respected him, and he's actually a really good teacher, I really developed an early interest in languages, and we had a little taster year, so I really liked that German, and I was really good at it, so I was
Hmm.
encouraged, which I was a bit of a delinquent back in the day, so when I actually got some praise for something, it was really nice. And I think that's pretty much where it started. But I don't think it got good, like proper. I don't think I converted it into something useful until I started going to Germany actually. In high school, or maybe a little bit before. Yeah, it was high school. I think we went to this conference. It's a Model United Nations, which is an event.
Hmm. That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's
I've
actually
heard
really
of those
fun.
types
It's
of
like
events.
you just pretend you're some country, you're a delegate in the UN, and you do all these meetings where you have to speak in a very it's all in English, but it was in Germany where I participated, and I had to stay with a host family, and I had a host student from the school, and we would speak mostly in German, and I would try to sort of get around in German. And I think I went there 2 times. And then in university, we also went on a week trip where we had a bit of classroom as just theory. And then after the classroom sessions, I was staying with a German guy as well, who's a really cool guy. And I tried to just speak German with him. And those couple of examples really just, yeah, turned my passive knowledge, which I developed over so many years, because I think that's what you do when you're in school. You develop passive vocabulary, you develop passive understanding. So when people
Hmm.
actually speak to you, if you've had it for many years, I mean, this is just about you know the volume of information you have stored in your brain. It's so much easier to actually convert that into a functional language rather than doing a functional language from the beginning, which is, I mean, I really respect people who can do, a couple of months of study and then actually have what seems like normal conversation. They're a little bit basic, maybe, but for me, it took years and years and years. So I wouldn't call it successful. It's definitely not quick, but it does mean that I understand literally everything in German now, and I can't really write very well, if at all, because the mistakes are too obvious. But if I'm speaking, I sort of glance over it, or I can say it in a different way, and yeah, it's good enough. But that brings me to another problem: is if it's good enough, I don't really have motivation to make it better because there's so many other languages I'd like to learn. But at the same time, it seems silly not to spend a little bit of time on it and get it to a really good level. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you have any of that kind of
These are
thing?
all choices, that we have to make. You can't be proficient in every
No.
single language to the same level. Like for example, I speak French and I speak English fairly well. Like when people ask me, okay, what are your native languages? I'll say
Hmm.
French and English. It's both. However, you speak to any Quebecois here, when they hear me speak French, they say, "Oh, this guy's an Anglo." And when I speak to people that are English, they'll say,
Oh, that's
"Oh, he's
amazing.
he's French." And it's like, I'll never be able to um, speak it to a level or have the same intonations or things like that because of the fact that I was raised with both. And often in my own family, where we do
Hmm.
a lot of code switching, so we're always switching between both languages and stuff like that. And we don't even realize that we're
Yeah.
doing so most of the time. When I was young, that was my norm. I remember when I was in elementary school, my teacher in fifth grade noticed that I was always switching like that. And then one day, my mom came to a parent student activity and stuff like that, and she met her and she started talking with her, and she said, "Now I understand. You guys are natural code switchers. You just switch from one language to
Yeah.
the other all the time, and we
Right.
do
Oh,
it
I've
without
seen this. Yeah,
realizing."
I've seen this. It's quite. I find it quite amazing, actually. It's quite beautiful.
And I guess that's because you're each equally comfortable in both languages, and you know that the person that you're speaking with is also like that. So because of
Yeah.
that, you will code switch. If I'm speaking with someone that I know is not, I guess, proficient in that language too, then I'll stick to only one. Like
Yeah.
with you, I'm only talking in English. But I mean, with other people, it's sometimes you'll go and it could go in three languages: French,
Yeah.
English,
Exactly.
Spanish,
Yeah.
depending who you're with,
Sometimes it's weird. I,
because that's the way the
sometimes I don't
conversations
know
flow.
what to
Sometimes
do. I have some friends, for instance, in the sometimes we're in a group where we might have three common languages, and but English is like the easy way
hmm
out that will usually get most involved, but we try to mix it up a bit. So I have a German group at the gathering and stuff. We try to speak German, which is nice. Though that's another thing that also helps me sort of keep my level or improve. Is just practice. I'm at that stage now where I don't really need more theory, just need practice and listening and speaking. So that's the
Have you been watching
Babylon
Babylon
Berlin.
Berlin
I have not. What's
on
that about?
Netflix? Oh, it's a great series. It's in German, obviously. It's called Babylon Berlin. It's on Netflix right now. It's like a from the replica of the 1920s in
Wow.
Germany and things like that. It's happening in Berlin. I'm enjoying watching it, although they speak so fast. It's a challenge for
Yeah.
me to try to follow. But great series, great decors, the way they dress and stuff like
Right.
that. It's
Yeah. I
it's
see
really
they don't
fun.
have it on the UK Netflix, unfortunately. So I might have to find it other places. Pirate. Um,
you don't have
no, they
they don't
do,
have
but it's a
Netflix in the
different
UK. I'm surprised.
catalog. Right.
They don't have
They have
necessarily the
they
same
have different they
programs
have different
also and
contracts for
things of the
each
sort. Yeah.
series, each film, even. So which is stupid. I really wish the world was more global when it comes to these stupid things. It's like watching, you go on, you read a news article from somewhere, and like on the web, you don't care if it's like the New York Times or it's the Istanbul Esquire, but if you go on their website and it's like, sorry, the producer of this video has blocked viewers from your country from seeing this, and I'm like, why? Like, yeah, it
Yeah,
happens
that
to me
happens to
too
me
all the
all the
time. And I'm like,
time.
who
Yes.
cares? First of all, if more people watch your stuff, you have better numbers to show advertisers, so you can get more money. Second of all, why am I going to pirate a 2-minute news section? What exactly are you worried about? I don't understand it. It's like, oh, it's not licensed to your country. Okay. The internet, hello. But anyway, that's a rant on the side. We better get talking about
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Langfest.
It,
So it's your third year, is it? Yeah, it is. Third
yes,
year.
it is our third
And
year.
maybe you want to just quickly,
We're gonna.
I mean, we don't have endless amounts of time, of course, but maybe just quickly how you started it. We might have talked about it before, but I like a good story. So what made you start this event back in 2016?
So in 2016, when we held the first ever, I guess, uh, Langfest, which back then was called NAPS,
Hmm.
North American Polyglot Symposium, um, it was sort of a spin-off of a movement that started after the Polyglot Conference, which many people know about. Came to North America and held did
Yeah.
their conference in New York City. For many people like myself, and Tetsu and many other people in North America. It was the first time that we ever went to this type of polyglot event that brought people from all around the world together, and people talked about languages, and you could exchange with people, meet really interesting presenters, and just have a weekend
Hmm.
of languages. And a lot of us, that attended that event were so completely blown away by the fact that this type of event, because it could have happened right here, and it was so much fun and things of the sort. We were all on a high, I guess, for a little while after the event ended. And there started to be talks, about uh, holding a type of event like this in North America. Um, they did a poll, I guess. This group of persons did a poll: where should we organize this event? What city would be good representative of languages in North America and stuff like that? And overwhelmingly, Montreal was chosen. So then after, they said, who actually lives in Montreal? Who's from there?
Mm.
Who could help us organize this? So then Tetsu and I sort of became the de facto organizers of that first event. We didn't really realize what we were getting ourselves into, but the polyglot world really responded very positively to our holding this kind of event. I mean, we brought together, uh, people like Benny Lewis, Ollie Richards, Stephen Kaufman, and many others. That you see sometimes on YouTube or whatever, and they're people
Yeah,
you really
definitely.
look up to with regards to languages. We even really got this really great guy called Chris Broholm to come down to present
Yeah.
at our event. So I mean, it was really great, and people like yourself really just encouraged us and kept us going, and we managed in holding our first event successfully. It was very in, informal, I guess, but I mean, we put it together. We got about a little bit more than 100 persons,
Hmm.
120 persons, more or less, to attend the event. It was held at Concordia University. I'm an alumni from Concordia University, and when I was there, I guess I was in a student association called ISEC, and they helped us, get the space for very, very cheap. So we had great space, great speakers. All that was left was advertising it and getting people to come, and people responded and came. So that's what got the first NAPS Langfest done. Then after that really successful first year, we did a second edition, and we got Stephen Kaufman, Ollie Richards, Richard Simcott, Alex Rawlings, and many other people to come down. We even got the little
Yeah.
girl, what's her name, Bella
That is, yeah, it's a
Livyatkina.
great,
Uh,
great
I
story.
mean, when you have people like that say, "Sure, I'll come down," you're like, "What? Okay, let's. We really got to work
Yeah.
hard to make this happen."
And I saw the
So that's what we
pictures
did.
and stuff,
And this
it
year,
is great success last year as well. Very jealous that I couldn't make it.
so this year, Benny's going to be there again for a third year. He's always been a very, very big supporter, I guess. We're going to have Steve Kaufman. We have. Uh, I'm very much into learning German. So one of the persons that I admire a lot that has a really great YouTube channel is this girl called Anya Winter, who
Hmm.
does Learn German with Anya. And she's never been to any polyglot event ever, but she accepted to come down to Montreal. So she's going to be presenting at our event, and she'll also do a German workshop. We couldn't have her without making her do a German workshop,
Fantastic.
so she's
So
going to do a
a little
German
bit for
workshop.
personal gain there as well. That's no shame in that.
I
No,
guess
but
so.
I just
I guess
would
so.
just want to take
So
a second. Just some people I know have never been to any of these language events, so it might sound a little bit strange to them? What could you possibly do with these events? You said obviously to meet other people, to network, to maybe exchange some languages, to try using your language skills. But for me, I feel like it's more of what do you call it, like a camp. Have you ever been to one
I
of those camps where everyone has one interest, like either a band or science or even math? I've heard about in the US. I feel like it's just a bunch of people with the same similar interests who are usually extremely nice and friendly, very welcoming to anyone who comes there. And you just have a really nice weekend and you meet a lot of people. You practice a lot of languages if you want. People have lots of languages on their badges, so you can quickly spot people if you want to practice a particular one. And you just come home with, I feel like, a great sensation of not belonging is probably a big word, but you're part of something bigger all of a sudden, and you build a network in the whole world, and of course, spending a weekend in Montreal, in beautiful Montreal, is also part of the package. But how would you sort of describe the experience?
look. I think you hit it on the nail on many of the things. To me, it's more
Yeah,
than
I agree.
just a conference. It's sort of an experience. It's an adventure. Like you come down for 3 to 6 days because the event actually starts on the 21st on the Tuesday, and we have a lot of opportunities for people to get to meet each other, do a little bit of city, get to know the city, do some touring, some touristy things, and the actual conference starts on the Friday. Um, Language learning, I think, sometimes is a very lonely, uh, lonely
Yeah.
activity. It's something you do on your own. Okay, and for many people, we don't get the chance to exchange with individuals like ourselves that are into learning languages, that have a curiosity for language learning, uh, very often.
Hmm.
And coming to this kind of event, you do find yourself amongst your peers, amongst people that have that general openness, friendliness, and where you feel welcome. Even though you're we're all everybody's trying to learn a language, and everybody's at different levels in different languages depending on which
Hmm.
language you're trying to learn. So everybody knows what you're going through. They know the tricks, the tools.
Yeah.
They know the pain that you go through when you're trying to learn. They know about the challenges and things of the sort. And I think being in that crowd,
Yeah.
there's a
Oh, yeah.
very special energy,
It's exciting.
and we try to really, like, give people an opportunity to exchange and interact with one another. That's why there's a lot of there's a lot of social. There's some academic also, I guess. I mean, we got some really great presenters that will talk to you about uh, different the neurology of the brain, and why language acquisition works, and which part of your brain it accesses, the right hemisphere, the left hemisphere, things like that. But you also have presentations where you'll learn how to write your
Yeah.
name in Chinese, like Chinese calligraphy. You'll have things where you'll have people that make a living, doing accents and things of the sort, or speaking different languages with a more
Yeah.
comedic
How
twist.
to make money from languages,
You have people that
traveling.
are
Yeah.
world travelers.
Personal experiences, I always like those, like
Um,
somebody talking about their own.
exactly. And you'll find that many of the people that come to I guess Langfest are also some of the people that go to the Polyglot Gathering and that go to the Polyglot Conference. It's sort of a tour. They do
Mm,
like three,
yeah.
four
Yeah. Oh,
events like
yeah. Yeah.
this
I mean, many of my
every
friends,
year.
yeah, did use that. I
'Cause-
mean, there's always a bit of a divide between America and Europe because it's just so hard. Yeah, well, hard. It's very expensive and time consuming to travel between. So I find
Mhm.
that in Europe, for instance, this is totally true. Like if you go to the conference and the gathering, the overlap is sometimes 50%. You know, people go to both of them. So I can,
And there's 6 months in between both, so you
yeah, I think
it's
so.
well
Yeah,
timed that you want to see those people again and exchange with them. Oh, where how are you doing in this language? Oh, you've improved this now. That's good. Oh, what
yeah,
new
it was
languages are
fun
you
and
picking up? And we have a little bit of that
yeah,
in
it was
Montreal
fun back
also.
then.
Travel in
Yeah,
North America
definitely.
is
Or
more
getting
expensive.
just to there from Europe, but you have the same problem for the gathering.
Yeah, and we don't have the same dynamics that you have in Europe, where all the countries are so close to one another that you can
Yeah,
travel easily and things like that, and every language is different. Here, you basically have English, a little bit of
yeah,
French, and some Spanish in many parts of the U.S. Um, However, I mean, if you have an interest for languages, it's not promoted as much as it is down there. So for us to have this kind of event here, uh, it's more unique.
yeah.
There's not really anybody else that's doing this kind
Yeah,
of
definitely.
event
And
in
also,
North
I think
America.
Montreal is a multilingual city beyond just English and French. I mean, I saw an absolutely huge Chinese, do you call it Chinatown there? And this big,
Yeah, there's
yeah,
a
Oh yeah,
Chinatown,
Koreatown as well. Yeah,
Koreatown, Greek. We have so there's probably more than
right.
100 languages spoken in Montreal. Some neighborhoods are very, very multicultural. Um, it's one of the cities with
Yeah.
that is very vibrant,
Oh, I
rich
love
in
Montreal so much.
culture and food and exchange and all kinds of things. It's really I feel fortunate
Yeah,
to
it's a
be
wonderful
here,
city.
I
I mean,
guess.
I've just from my experience 2 years ago, going to Langfest and being in that city. Honestly, that is a city where I would just say, okay, I could live here for sure, because it's a North American city without a doubt, but it has a very European feel. Like it's very sort of, small, nice places, cafes, enjoying yourself, having some good experiences, beautiful green areas, all over and really nice people as well. I was really impressed with just how friendly and welcoming most everyone I talked to there was.
So, well,
Yeah, oh,
hopefully
yeah,
we get to
you
see
will
you again,
definitely. I don't know when, maybe next year. Yeah,
maybe
I
next
need to
year.
be careful not to say that every year because then obviously I'll never come. But yeah, once I found a little bit more of a steady, stable place to live and job, then I'm definitely gonna come because it's also an opportunity for me to go a little bit further. Going to Germany, Berlin or something, it's not really much of a trip. It's exciting as always, but going on a nice long flight and seeing a part of the world you didn't see before, like when I was there the last time I drove down to Boston and picked up a friend and we did a little mini road trip, which wouldn't have happened if there was no Langfest. So yeah, I think I would highly encourage people to take that opportunity if they can. Obviously, it is expensive to fly there for most people, unless you're a local or in the area. But the rewards are also equally good. The opportunities you can find, the friendships you can make, like from my first year at the Polyglot Gathering in Berlin, which is 2014, that was the first year they had that event. So, and speaking of which, these are such new things. Have you thought about that? It feels like we've had these events forever, but the oldest one, the conference, I think started in, was it 13, 12? It's not. It's not.
Something like that, yeah.
No.
They haven't been running for very long, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's a great movement, and
Massive success.
last year, Richard Simcott was saying, that he's very happy to see that his uh, his event that he started, the Polyglot Conference, sort of has uh, had
Yeah,
two
yeah, for sure.
children, if you want to call it that, the Polyglot Gathering and now the Langfest. But I mean, it's a wonderful thing, and I'm sure in the coming years you'll see it pop up in other areas of the world too. I
Right.
mean, Africa doesn't have
I
anything.
hope about
Asia
Asia.
definitely
Yeah, an
should
excuse to go to Asia would be
have.
fantastic for me because I've never been. I don't really have any experience, first-hand experiences with real Asian culture. So for me, if they did say a public gathering in, I don't know, Beijing or I don't know, South Korea or Japan or something, would be
Hmm.
super interesting. Yeah, I would
It
definitely
would be
try and make it
amazing.
for that,
Yes.
or maybe even like a lot of things happening in Thailand as well, Bangkok or Chiang Mai. There's a lot of expats as well, so maybe not ideal, but
Hmm.
all
I've
right,
never been
there
to
you go.
Asia either, so that would be the let's throw them the
It's
idea. Let's
obviously
get
a
them to
massive
organize it.
task to, or, I mean, you know how hard it is to organize an event in your home city.
Yes, absolutely. And we don't
Yeah,
change
imagine
city
if you
every
had to
year.
organize Langfest next year in Tokyo. Good luck.
Exactly. It's I mean, our first when we first started, we were thinking about bringing it to different cities every year across North America. We still want to do that, but I mean, the logistics of organizing an event like this
Yeah,
are significant. Let's call it that. So we haven't given up on that dream, but it's
maybe one day,
maybe
yeah. Well,
soon.
I mean, it's all the growth. You saw the gathering in Berlin was in Berlin for 3 years, and now it's in Bratislava for a while, and it might move again. And I think that's great. And the conference was obviously always changing every year, but I like the idea of seeing where it goes, see what people like.
Getting to
Yeah,
experience a new part
there
of the
I
world
had this
also and
discussion
stuff
with
like
lots
that.
of my friends who go to most of the events, and I think there are definitely merits for both. I find it exciting to have an event that changes every year, definitely. But I also don't mind coming back to the same place because then, first of all, I can explore that place more. Like I was fortunate enough to be a month in Montreal, but usually when I go to these things, I would only be there for the conference itself and maybe one day of sightseeing. So you don't really
Which
yeah,
is
exactly.
definitely not
So
enough. You're
if it
right.
is there every year, then I can check out more things and I can maybe spend a little bit more energy on the event itself, which is obviously the main reason you go. But yeah, I see advantages in both, and I think you just need to see where it goes and what people say. If people start being a little bit bored of Montreal, which I don't understand necessarily how it could be, but might happen, then maybe look into moving it a little bit, or
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying that our original premise was that we would be moving every year. I have a lot of respect for Richard and Alex that they manage in having a formula that they can do so.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's a lot of
And
work.
oh yeah,
That's
but
all I'll say.
luckily, or well, not luckily. I mean, to their credit, they always get someone local to help them out with a lot. Exactly. So
Give them a hand. Yes. They wouldn't be able to do so. When you hold this kind of event, even at Langfest, we have countless amounts of
yeah,
volunteers that give us a hand. You don't see them, but they're all there and they're all working very hard to make everything happen. And holding those types of events without the help of volunteers would
for
be
sure. Yeah.
absolutely impossible.
So apart from let's say the nice talks and various different topics, you've got the social aspects covered, you've got extracurricular activities planned. Are there anything else that you want to just quickly mention that also happens or that people should be aware of? Maybe some quick tips about people first time going to Montreal.
Well, some
Oh
some new things that we're going to do this year is first of all we're going to have the
yeah.
language Olympiads. I don't think anything's never happened before anywhere. We're going to try to do some kind of game.
Uh-huh.
It's going to be called the Language Olympiads. That's going to be on the first day on the Friday. Um, we have our big kickoff event that starts on the 21st at Mundolingo. Do they have Mundolingo in
I
the
don't
UK now, or
think
they
so. I
still
haven't heard
don't?
of it yet.
Yeah. Did you come? Did
Yeah,
you
I
attend
was
the
there for
Mundolingo
one
event when
one
you
night.
came to
I
Montreal?
think it's definitely an interesting event. I would recommend people always check Meetup as well, in case there might not be a
Hmm.
Modulingo, but there might be a Chinese group or Oh,
meetups or things like that. Yeah, so Mundolingo is an event that sort of brings people from everywhere. You
yeah,
put the tag in the languages that you want to speak, and you just meet up and talk with people. So that's where we're going to start our first day, sort of to get people to mix and talk with people right from
yeah,
the get go and things of the sort. For the rest, I think we have a very good program. It's going to be a lot of fun. If anybody does come, I would encourage them to come earlier. Don't come just on the 24th. Try to come on the
yeah,
21st or the 22nd, so you
definitely.
get a chance to do some of the before activities. On the 26th, which is the Sunday, we always end our event with a big picnic after, some kind of potluck, where everybody just gets together, unwinds, and we talk about our weekend and how much fun we had and things of the sort. Weather has been nice for the last 2 years. We're hoping, crossing
Yeah,
our fingers, that it will be nice again for a third consecutive year, and we can hold our picnic after. But that's really a nice way to like
yeah,
unwind an event and have people. So if you do come, don't leave right away on the 24th. Leave the
yeah. You
leave
mean
the next morning.
26? Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I
It's
would recommend.
I would say that as well.
Yeah,
You
or the
wanna you don't want to have just the event. Obviously, some people have to because of work, they can't make more. But I would say if you can make a trip out of it and take the week, there's always stuff going on in Montreal anyway. So the city itself is buzzing. I remember there was a jazz festival. There was a some of the street. Yeah.
there's Just for Laughs, there's
Oh yeah, that's true.
Francophonie, there's 1,000 things that are happening in Montreal.
Yeah, and there's
Montreal is a
always
city of
something going on
festivals.
downtown as well that's not sometimes related to a festival. I didn't really understand that. There was like a city that was, I mean, a street that was closed off and it had some stalls, and I don't know how that works either, but there's definitely a lot of buzz and obviously rich cafe life, lots of restaurants, a lot of experiences, bars, cafes. It's really a pleasure to be there, and I really enjoyed my time there. It was
I'm
fantastic.
glad that you did. If you hadn't, probably
Well,
we wouldn't be talking
there you
now
go.
after 3 years. I consider myself fortunate to have had the opportunity to meet with you
Oh well,
at
thank
this
you.
kind of event, Chris. And that's the kind of thing that I encourage people to uh, to want
Meet
to
new
want to
people.
have. It's the magic of those
Yeah,
uh,
and,
those
and the
types of
event itself
events.
is also good. I have many fun memories. The picnic, for instance, I remember as a really fun time. We were there until it was dark. Basically, we couldn't see anything. And like I said, I remember the tacos one night. There was a car crash out in front of the restaurant, or a little place we were at, and these are all things that wouldn't be
Hmm.
possible if I didn't, you know, make the effort, or at least you can go back and say even further than that, go back to actually have an interest in languages to begin with. These are part of the opportunities, the experiences that open up when you do that.
But if I can ask you, I mean, for me, obviously attending the Polyglot conference the first time kind of changed my life, opened me up to many different opportunities, and that's how I became co-organizer of Langfest and things of the sort. On your side, how has your attending the Polyglot Gathering, you said in 2014,
Yeah, yeah,
can you
for
see a
sure.
different person? Is there a,
It
is there
was
is there a
day or
different
night, day or night. I
Chris?
mean,
I guess.
I knew that I was always that person, but it just sort of made sense. It made it real in a way. I got confirmation. I met so
Hmm.
many talented people. Like I met Benny Lewis there, who I'd been following on YouTube and on his blog for probably 6 months before that. That I found him 6 months before, and I read every blog post he ever made. I saw all his videos, and I was just amazed that somebody could make it so look so easy, um, and I actually,
Yeah.
it's a funny story, but I don't know if it's fate or whatever you want to call it. I always find like fate and destiny funny in retrospect, but I don't really believe it in going forward. I feel like you always have to look back to make the connection. But so I've told this story before as well. I found Benny's blog and I realized that you can actually be a polyglot. Like you can learn languages more or less just for the sake of it. I know you obviously have reasons for each language, but it's like a hobby where I had a talk with Azran yesterday. He's also coming to the Langfest. He's a
Exactly.
great guy. Really,
Yeah, great
really
kid.
full of energy and talented. And he said something like along the lines of, when language learning is your main focus of your life, basically meaning it doesn't matter what you do as a job or as other hobbies or with your family or who you see where you go, language learning will always be there. So you build your life around that, and I felt so that was when I discovered Benny, and I got that idea. I started seeing other people, Richard Simcott, Alex Rawlings, all these classics. Of course,
Hmm.
Kaufman as well, a legend in its own way. Which, I mean, that's a whole other story. Meeting Kaufman as well, he's fantastic. But I went to the gathering, and we had kind of a small room. It was a bit like it was just it wasn't meant to be an auditorium or anything. It's just a small room, a couple hundred seats. It was a relatively small event. The first one, I think they had less than 200 people there with the volunteers, which of course
Hmm.
is completely dwarfed now by the 500 plus in Bratislava. But so I said there's like, I'm sitting next to my friend Chris, who I also met through this language learning, Chris Huff, who's also a great guy. And there's two seats vacant next to me and Chris. And we all sit down ready for the presentation, welcome to Polyglot Gathering. And a little bit soon, there's like a little breath of everyone like takes a breath in at the same time. There's like the suspense in the room changes. And I look up and Benny walks in, and he's like the celebrity of the community, or at least he was back then. I don't know if it's if it's a little bit normalized now, but he was definitely the biggest celebrity there. And he walked in, and where else would he sit? Right next to me, of course, because there were no other seats available. And when he came in, I shook his hand, and he had absolutely no reason to know who I am for any reason, because I'd only just started the podcast a month before, so I hadn't really built up anything. And when he came to shake my hand, his partner Lauren asked, so he just looked at him like, "Oh, who's this?" It's like, "Oh, this is Chris from Actual Fluency." I was like, "Bam!" I was there. I was already, I'd already, even to just one person, I'd built up something that was at least memorable for a couple of weeks. I've obviously emailed Benny to be on the show, but so to
Hmm.
say that the first Polyglot gathering changed my life is a bit of an understatement, even. So yeah,
Understatement. Yeah.
it defined everything from there. And for I think about 2 years, I published an episode every week, based off of that energy initial push. Well, occasional exceptions, but that was it. And I think the most important thing is that I saw real people doing what they said they were doing. I could read on Benny's blog, "Oh yeah, I speak 12 languages or something." But when I saw Benny get literally carpet bombed by people asking him questions in different languages and sort of holding his own, I don't think Benny's ever pretended to be, an expert in all his languages. I was like, okay, well,
Hmm.
there is a truth to it. And I met some of the most amazing, talented people I've ever seen, people who speak 8, 10, 12 languages to a really high level. And that just made a big difference, because before it was just theory, right? You're like, oh yeah, all these people know all these languages, but it's not real until you actually see it and feel it in person. And it helps that they're all amazingly friendly and nice and welcoming, and you can ask them all the stupid questions you
Exactly.
have, if any. They're always very accommodating and patient with new people. I felt extremely welcome, even though I think I knew Chris and then maybe two other people I'd written with. And for instance, Judith, who's the main organizer, I'd written a little bit with, and she was on my podcast, but she didn't recognize me when I came. So, it's not like I had 200 famous people in the community who who knew who I was. Exactly. Yeah, I
Who
was
knew
just
who
a
you
brand
were?
new
Yeah.
one, like everyone else. And by the end of every day, I was so tired just by socializing, just meeting people all day, and it's just a fantastic experience. So if you're listening to this and you haven't gone to a language event, a language polyglot event, I guess we can call it. Not that you need to be a polyglot to go. That's a big thing I would like to mention. But yeah, I really encourage you to do it, because it can be life changing. I don't want to promise that it will be, but there's some sample size to suggest it might be.
Yeah, it's. I've had similar experience, Chris. In any case, I mean, this experience that I had has put me on a path where I've had the chance to meet and exchange with so many incredible people that, like you, I have the energy to be able to just keep going forward in my learning. And I'm really enthusiastic about future opportunities that I will get of meeting really extraordinary people from all walks of life that, blow me
Yeah,
away every day. It's great to be in the presence of individuals that really help take you out of your maybe your original comfort zone or wherever you are, and make you be more than what you
yeah,
what you normally are, if you understand what I'm
definitely.
trying to say. Anyways, um it's a great feeling. So for me, I'm privileged to be co-organizer of this event. um it's gotten me to get to meet and exchange with so many amazing people, and I really encourage everyone
Give it a
to come along.
try.
It's
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that's it. I mean, if I'm absolutely convinced that
yeah.
they're gonna enjoy the experience.
Can I just
I have
thank
no
you
doubt
for
about
doing
it.
it on behalf of the whole community? Because I know that the work involved is just insane, and I know that any compensation, if any, is absolutely tiny compared to the effort it takes to put this through. So let me just thank you for doing that, because if you didn't, then I'm not sure there would be an event like this, and people would really be missing out on it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Chris. I do it, when you do things like this, you don't do it for yourself. You want people to enjoy the experience and to really be able to get like maybe a tiny bit of what you and I got when we went to our first
Yeah.
polyglot event. If they get that,
Me
I will be
too.
the happiest
But
guy in the
anyway,
world.
yeah, so when this episode goes live, of course, there might be people listening in the future to future editions. For now, I don't know if you've already decided on having one in 19 yet, but you can always go to langfest.org to see the latest status and sign up. And you can use the code KRIS, the discount code there. I'll be sure to write to you and get it activated for next year's event as well. So in case people are listening to this in the future, they can always use that code to grab any available discount if you are running any. And
Yeah, well,
2 weeks from
there'll
now.
always be the 15% discount that you get when you use a promo code, but you also get discounts for being a student. If you buy 2 tickets, buy with a friend, you get an extra discount. If you go, you get a couple of persons together, you get extra discounts. There's also spot events, spot promotional things that which you can cumulatively put
That's cool.
together. You can get up to 57.5% off at
Wow,
a certain point, I think. The whole, if we could give it, if we could let
of
people come
course,
for free, we would. Unfortunately, having a venue, getting all kinds of those things does have a
of
cost,
course.
but
But the value
there's a
is
lot of
insane, though. Like,
promo codes out there that make it not so expensive, and it's really
but
uh, a nominal amount when you
of
think of
course, yeah, I
the
think
what you get
so.
from it.
And they also, if you have a life-changing experience, it's not that bad. Considering what people might spend on going out for a nice meal, or a few days on holiday, you can easily spend double the amount it costs to take part in Langfest, where you might meet people to change your life, or find some ideas that will change the path you're on to a more desirable path. Or yeah, there's so many things that can happen. So even if it even if there were no discounts, I'd still encourage people to go. It's worth it for sure.
Absolutely. So thanks for receiving me, Chris. I really
Likewise,
enjoyed
it's
speaking
been a
with
long
you.
time coming. I remember we talked about this for a while, so it's good to finally catch up and hear a little bit more about your story with language learning. And I hope you managed to perfect your German. I know it's a tricky one for many people. It trips up.
I will not give
that
up
is
until I
that is
succeed.
that's the attitude to have. So thank you so much, Joey. Yeah, Langfest. If you're listening to this on the day, it's about 2 weeks from now. And if you're listening to this after the end of August 2018, well, check langfest.org for new updates, new information about upcoming events. And Joey, if people are fascinated by your story, want to get in touch, want to send you a message or anything, is there a particular way to do that?
Well, you can write to me at joey@langfest.org or through Facebook, uh, the
Yeah,
Facebook page of Langfest, I guess. I'm all over, so I'm very hard,
perfect. Well,
easy
thank you so
person
much,
to
Joey, and
reach.
all the best for the event.